April 3, 2025, 11:17 a.m. Caracas, Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro stands at the podium. Behind him, 6 massive transport containers, Russian flags painted on the sides. Military officers from both nations stand at attention. Maduro speaks to the cameras. Venezuela now possesses the most advanced weapons in the world. Hypersonic missiles, supplied by our Russian allies. Any aggressor who threatens our sovereignty will face consequences. He pauses for effect, including the United States. The containers open. Inside, 3 M22 Zircon hypersonic cruise missiles, 6 of them, each capable of traveling at Mach 9, each capable of sinking an aircraft carrier, each now aimed at American targets in the Caribbean. This is the Cuban Missile Crisis for the 21st century. Navy warfare reveals how the United States responded and what happened in the 48 hours that followed. The warning signs started 3 months earlier. January 2025. U.S. intelligence detects unusual Russian cargo flights to Venezuela, not the normal military aid, something bigger, heavy transport aircraft, AN-124 Ruslan cargo planes, multiple flights per week. Satellite imagery shows the aircraft landing at Maiquetía Airport outside Caracas. Large containers are offloaded, moved immediately to military bases, covered, hidden from overhead surveillance. The CIA analyst reviewing the images knows something is wrong. Russian cargo flights to Venezuela aren't unusual, but this volume, this level of security, something significant is being delivered. She flags it. Priority intelligence report. Within 48 hours, it's on the president's daily brief. February 2025, more evidence accumulates. Signal intelligence intercepts Russian military communications. The conversations are encrypted, but metadata reveals patterns. Russian missile specialists are in Venezuela. Technicians from NPO Mashinostroyenia, the company that builds Zircon missiles. Naval intelligence cross-references with human sources in Venezuela. A dock worker reports seeing long cylindrical objects being transported under heavy guard. A military defector provides details. Russia is installing new missiles at bases near the coast. The picture becomes clear. Russia is arming Venezuela with advanced weapons, probably anti-ship missiles, possibly hypersonic. February 28th, satellite confirmation. A KH-11 spy satellite captures images of a Venezuelan naval base at Puerto Cabello. The resolution is incredible. Individual personnel are visible. Equipment is identifiable. And there, partially covered by camouflage netting, a mobile launcher. The configuration matches Russian 3 M22 Zircon systems. The dimensions are right. The support vehicles are right. Venezuela has hypersonic missiles. The intelligence assessment reaches the president within 4 hours. The national security team convenes immediately. The question on everyone's mind: what do we do? March 15th, diplomatic pressure begins. The U.S. ambassador to the UN presents evidence to the Security Council. Satellite photos, signal intercepts, expert analysis. The conclusion: Russia has armed Venezuela with Zircon hypersonic missiles in violation of international arms control agreements. Russia's ambassador denies everything. These are defensive systems. Venezuela has the right to defend itself. The United States has no authority to dictate what weapons sovereign nations may possess. China supports Russia. The U.S. has armed dozens of countries. Why is it different when Russia does the same? The vote fails. No action taken. The international community is paralyzed. March 25th, Russia makes it official. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announces the deployment. The Russian Federation has provided Venezuela with advanced defensive systems to protect against potential aggression. These weapons are purely defensive. They pose no threat to nations that respect Venezuelan sovereignty. The Pentagon knows that's a lie. Zircon missiles are offensive weapons. They're designed to sink ships, specifically American aircraft carriers. Range, 1,000 kilometers. Speed, Mach 9, almost impossible to intercept. If Venezuela launches these missiles at U.S. naval vessels in the Caribbean, American sailors will die. That's unacceptable. April 3rd, Maduro's announcement. The Venezuelan president makes the deployment public. 6 Zircon missiles, operational, ready to fire. The message is clear. Venezuela is now a regional power, protected by Russia, armed with weapons that can threaten the United States. American oil refineries on the Gulf Coast are within range. Key West Naval Station is vulnerable. Even Miami could be threatened if the missiles are moved north. The Monroe Doctrine, America's 200-year-old policy that the Western Hemisphere is off-limits to foreign military power, has been challenged directly. The United States must respond. April 3rd, 3:47 p.m. Emergency National Security Council meeting. President sits at the head of the table. Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, CIA Director, NSA Director, everyone who matters is present. The President opens simply, options. The Secretary of Defense goes first. Military options range from limited to comprehensive. At the low end, we increase naval presence in the Caribbean. Show of force. Let Venezuela know we're watching. At the high end, we conduct strikes on the missile sites. Destroy them before they can be used. What about Russian personnel? The President asks. If we strike those sites and kill Russians, we're at war with Russia. Intel suggests most Russian technicians have departed. Training is complete. The systems are operated by Venezuelans now, but we can't be certain. There's risk. The Secretary of State offers the diplomatic angle. We can negotiate. Offer to lift sanctions on Venezuela in exchange for returning the missiles to Russia. Economic pressure has hurt Maduro's regime. He might take the deal. The CIA director is skeptical. Maduro won't give up the missiles voluntarily. They're his insurance policy. As long as he has them, he thinks we won't invade. He's probably right. The room debates for an hour. Military action risks war with Russia. Diplomacy probably won't work. Doing nothing is surrender. The Monroe Doctrine becomes meaningless. The President makes a decision. We deploy a carrier strike group to the Caribbean. Immediately. Show Venezuela and Russia that we're serious. Meanwhile, State Department opens back-channel negotiations with Moscow. Not Caracas, Moscow. Make it clear, those missiles leave Venezuela, or we remove them ourselves. Comment if you'd negotiate or strike first against hypersonic missiles 90 miles from Florida. April 4th, 6:00 a.m., USS George Washington receives deployment orders. The aircraft carrier is at Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia, scheduled for routine maintenance. Those plans change instantly. Orders: deploy to the Caribbean. Establish presence off Venezuelan coast. Be prepared for combat operations. The crew scrambles. Supplies are loaded. Aircraft are armed. Support ships prepare to sail. Within 18 hours, the carrier strike group is ready. The battle group includes USS George Washington, carrier, 2 Ticonderoga-class cruisers, 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, 2 Virginia-class submarines, and support vessels. Total, 11 ships, 7,500 personnel, 75 aircraft. It's the largest U.S. naval presence in the Caribbean since the Cold War. April 5th, 4 p.m. The strike group departs Norfolk. The carrier leaves port. Destroyers form protective screen. Submarines submerge and disappear. The flotilla turns south. Destination: Venezuelan waters. Transit time: 48 hours. Speed: 25 knots. By April 7th, the U.S. Navy will be positioned 100 miles off Venezuela's coast, within striking distance of the missile sites, within range of the Zircon missiles. This is a calculated risk. American ships will be vulnerable. If Venezuela launches, some ships will be hit. Sailors will die. But the presence demonstrates American resolve. You don't back down from threats in your hemisphere. April 5th, 8 p.m., Russia responds. The Russian Foreign Ministry issues a statement. The deployment of U.S. naval forces near Venezuela is provocative and destabilizing. Russia will support its allies with all necessary means. Any attack on Venezuelan territory will be considered an attack on Russian interests. Translation: if the U.S. strikes the missile sites, Russia might intervene militarily. The stakes just increased. April 6th, diplomatic channel opens. U.S. National Security Advisor calls Russian counterpart. The conversation is blunt. Your missiles in Venezuela cross a red line. They must be removed. We're giving you 72 hours to begin withdrawal. After that, we take action. The Russian responds, Venezuela is a sovereign nation. We provide defensive weapons. The United States provides weapons to Ukraine, Poland, Taiwan. Why is this different? Because Venezuela is 90 miles from Florida. Because those missiles threaten American territory. Because the Monroe Doctrine is non-negotiable. The Monroe Doctrine is 200 years old, irrelevant. It's relevant to us, 72 hours, starting now. The call ends. No agreement, no compromise. The clock is ticking. April 7th, 10 a.m., USS George Washington reaches station. The carrier strike group arrives 120 miles north of Venezuelan coast. International waters, legal position, but threatening posture. FA-18 Super Hornets launch from the carrier, combat air patrol. They orbit at 30,000 feet, visible on Venezuelan radar. The message, we're here, we're ready. Venezuelan military goes on high alert. Missile crews at the Zircon sites prepare for launch. Russian advisors, despite earlier reports, are still present. They're coordinating with Venezuelan forces. Both sides are ready to fight. One mistake, one miscalculation. War. April 7th, 2:00 p.m., Venezuela launches fighters. 6 Su-30 Mk2 fighters take off from La Carlota Air Base, Venezuelan Air Force. The jets are Russian-made, well-maintained, pilots trained by Russians. They head north, toward the U.S. carrier group. USS George Washington detects them immediately. The E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft tracks all 6. Bogies inbound, bearing 180, Angels 25, speed 450 knots. The air boss makes a decision. Launch additional cap, 4 Super Hornets, intercept the Venezuelan fighters before they reach the strike group. 4 more FA-18s catapult off the deck. They climb rapidly. Afterburners light, heading south to intercept. This could be the spark. American and Venezuelan fighters about to engage. First combat between the nations since... never. They've never fought directly. Until now. April 7th, 2:17 p.m., the intercept occurs. 8 American Super Hornets face 6 Venezuelan Sukhois. The 2 formations close. Radio calls on guard frequency. Venezuelan aircraft, this is U.S. Navy. You are approaching a U.S. carrier strike group. Alter course immediately. The Venezuelans respond in accented English. We are in international airspace. We have every right to be here. You leave our waters. Negative. We are conducting lawful operations. Turn back now. Neither side turns back. They close to 10 miles. Then 5. Visual range now. Pilots can see each other through cockpit canopies. Weapons are armed, radars lock, fire control systems ready. 1 trigger pull and missiles fly. But nobody shoots. The formations pass within 2 miles of each other, a stare down at 25,000 feet. Then the Venezuelans turn back, return to base. The crisis moment passes. But the tension remains. Next time, someone might shoot. Wait for what happens when China announces support for Venezuela. The situation escalates dramatically. April 7th, 9:00 p.m. Beijing time. China's Foreign Ministry statement. The People's Republic of China supports Venezuela's right to self-defense. The deployment of U.S. military forces in the Caribbean is aggressive and imperialistic. China stands with Venezuela and Russia in opposition to American hegemony. This is significant. China is backing Venezuela, not with weapons, yet, but politically. If the U.S. strikes Venezuela, China will condemn it, maybe impose economic sanctions, maybe support Venezuela with military aid. The situation is becoming multilateral. It's not just U.S. versus Venezuela. It's U.S. versus Russia-China-Venezuela axis. The president convenes another emergency meeting. China's involvement changes the calculus. If we strike Venezuela, we're not just fighting Maduro. We're antagonizing Beijing. That affects trade, Taiwan, everything. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs responds, Sir, The alternative is accepting Russian missiles 90 miles from Florida. That's unacceptable. We can't let China's statements deter us from defending our hemisphere. The debate continues, but the 72-hour deadline is approaching. Decision time is coming. April 8th, back-channel negotiations intensify. The CIA director meets with Russian intelligence counterpart in a neutral location, Geneva. The conversation is direct. Your missiles must leave Venezuela. We're not bluffing. In 48 hours, if they're still there, we strike. The Russian is equally direct. If you strike, we respond. Maybe not immediately, but we have assets. In Syria, in the Black Sea, American targets will be hit. Are you ready for that war? Are you? Your economy can't handle a prolonged conflict. Ours can. You'll lose. Everyone loses in war between nuclear powers. That's the truth hanging over everything. Russia and the United States both have thousands of nuclear weapons. A conventional conflict could escalate. The Caribbean crisis could become World War III. Both sides understand the risk. Neither wants it, but neither will back down. The meeting ends with no agreement, 48 hours remaining. April 9th, 6 a.m., military preparations intensify. USS George Washington goes to Condition 2. Halfway between normal operations and combat readiness. Half the crew at battle stations at all times. Aircraft armed with live weapons. Missiles loaded on launchers. The destroyers in the strike group go weapons hot. Tomahawk cruise missiles targeted on the Venezuelan missile sites. Coordinates programmed. Firing solutions calculated. Ready to launch on command. 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers deployed to Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. They're loaded with GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator bombs, 30,000-pound bunker busters. If the Zircon missiles are in hardened shelters, these weapons can reach them. The U.S. military is ready. If diplomacy fails, military action begins within hours. April 9th, 11 a.m., Venezuela moves the missiles. Satellite imagery detects activity at the Zircon sites. The missiles are being loaded onto transport vehicles. They're moving. But where? Analysis suggests they're being relocated to secondary sites, dispersing, making them harder to strike. If the U.S. attacks the known locations, the missiles won't be there. This complicates the military option. Can't destroy what you can't find. Venezuela is playing smart. With Russian advice, they're protecting their assets. The president is informed. Sir, the missiles are mobile now. We'd need to hit multiple locations simultaneously. Risk of missing some. Risk of collateral damage. The military option becomes less attractive. But the deadline still stands. April 10th, 2 a.m., Russia blinks first. The call comes at 2:14 a.m. Washington time. Russian president on the hotline. He speaks to the American president directly. We propose a solution. Russia will remove the Zircon missiles from Venezuela. In exchange, the United States agrees not to deploy similar systems in Eastern Europe, specifically Poland and Romania. The American president considers. Removing American missile defense systems from Eastern Europe weakens NATO, but leaving Russian hypersonic missiles in Venezuela threatens American cities. Not acceptable. The Aegis Ashore systems in Poland and Romania are defensive. Your Zircons in Venezuela are offensive. Not equivalent. Then we have no deal. The missiles stay. The conversation seems deadlocked. But then the American president offers a counter-proposal. Remove the Zircons from Venezuela. We won't deploy Tomahawk missiles in Ukraine. That's the deal. Silence on the line. Russia considers. Tomahawk missiles in Ukraine would threaten Russian territory. That's something Putin wants to avoid. The trade-off is acceptable. Agreed, but we need verification. American inspectors verify Zircons leave Venezuela. Russian inspectors verify Tomahawks don't enter Ukraine. Agreed. Draft the agreement, 24 hours. The deal is struck. Crisis averted. For now. Who won this standoff? A. United States. B. Russia, Venezuela. C. Nobody? Comment your take. April 11th, 3 p.m. The agreement is announced. Joint statement from Washington and Moscow. The United States and Russian Federation have reached an understanding regarding military deployments in the Western Hemisphere and Eastern Europe. Details will be finalized through diplomatic channels. Both nations are committed to reducing tensions and preventing conflict. Translation: Russia withdraws zircons from Venezuela. U.S. won't deploy Tomahawks to Ukraine. Both sides claim victory. Maduro is furious. He wasn't consulted. Russia made the deal without him. His insurance policy is being taken away. But he has no choice. Venezuela depends on Russian support. If Moscow says the missiles go, they go. April 15th. The missiles leave Venezuela. Under international supervision, the 6 Zircon missiles are loaded onto AN-124 cargo aircraft at Maiquetía Airport. Inspectors from Switzerland verify the weapons are departing. They're returned to Russia. The crisis ends. No shots fired, no casualties. Diplomacy prevailed. But everyone knows this isn't over. Russia will try again. Maybe in Cuba next time. Maybe Nicaragua. The chess game continues. USS George Washington remains on station for 2 more weeks, then departs. Mission accomplished. The Caribbean is secure. For now. Navy warfare has the strategic breakdown. The Zircon missile is Russia's most advanced anti-ship weapon. Speed: Mach 9, 6,900 mph. Range: 1,000 km. Warhead: 300-400 kilos high explosive. It's designed to penetrate aircraft carrier defenses. Traditional missile defense can't stop it. The Zircon travels too fast. Aegis radar can detect it, but interceptors can't reach it in time. The missile covers 1,000 kilometers in about 8 minutes. That's not enough time to react. By the time you detect the launch and calculate intercept, the missile is already close. The carrier has maybe 90 seconds to respond. Chaff, flares, electronic warfare, close-in weapon systems. None of it is guaranteed to work against Mach 9. That's why the deployment to Venezuela was so threatening. 6 Zircon missiles could sink an entire carrier strike group. Thousands of American sailors dead. Billions in hardware destroyed. The U.S. couldn't allow it. The risks were too high. Russia's strategy was clever. Arm Venezuela with advanced weapons. Force the U.S. to accept Russian military presence in the Western Hemisphere. Or negotiate to remove them, giving Russia leverage to prevent American weapons deployments near Russian borders. It almost worked, but the U.S. response was stronger than Russia expected. The carrier strike group deployment showed American willingness to risk conflict. The 72-hour ultimatum demonstrated resolve. Russia concluded that the U.S. would actually strike if necessary. So Russia negotiated. Got what they really wanted. No Tomahawks in Ukraine. That's more important to Moscow than keeping missiles in Venezuela. Venezuela got nothing, except a reminder that they're a pawn in great power politics. Maduro's regime is dependent on Russia and China. When those powers make deals, Venezuela complies. China's support was rhetorical only. No weapons, no economic aid, just statements. Beijing wanted to signal opposition to U.S. actions in the Western Hemisphere, but not enough to risk conflict. China has its own problems. Taiwan, South China Sea. They can't afford Caribbean adventures. The Monroe Doctrine survived, for now. The United States proved it will enforce its sphere of influence. Russian missiles in Venezuela crossed a red line. The U.S. responded with overwhelming force and willingness to strike. That deterred further escalation. Russia withdrew. Crisis resolved. But the underlying tensions remain. Russia wants to challenge American dominance. Venezuela wants protection from regime change. China wants to support anti-American states. These interests haven't changed. Next time, the crisis might be different. Maybe Cuba, maybe Nicaragua, maybe Bolivia. The game continues. Justified U.S. response or overreaction to defensive weapons. Comment J for justified, O for overreaction. May 2025, Congress holds hearings. The question: did the president handle the crisis correctly? Some argue for earlier military action. We should have struck immediately, destroyed the missiles before Russia could remove them, sent a stronger message. Others argue the opposite. We almost went to war over missiles that were withdrawn peacefully. Diplomacy worked. That's success. The president testifies. We achieved our objective. The missiles are gone. No American lives lost. No war with Russia. That's the definition of successful crisis management. Most agree. The approval ratings spike. Strength through diplomacy. That's the message. June 2025. Military lessons. The Pentagon studies the crisis. Key takeaways. 1. Rapid deployment capability is essential. USS George Washington reached the Caribbean in 48 hours. That speed matters. It demonstrates American ability to project power globally. 2. Hypersonic missiles are a real threat. Current defenses are inadequate. Investment in counter-hypersonic systems is critical. 3. Diplomatic credibility depends on military readiness. Russia believed the U.S. would strike because the military was visibly prepared. That made negotiation possible. 4. Intelligence advantages are decisive. American satellites detected the missiles early. That gave time to respond. Without early warning, the crisis would have been much worse. 5. Alliances matter. Even when allies don't participate directly, their political support legitimizes American actions. NATO backed the U.S. diplomatically. That mattered in international perception. These lessons get incorporated into future planning, training, doctrine. The military learns and adapts. July 2025. Venezuela's future. Maduro's regime is weaker now. The missile crisis exposed Venezuela's dependence on external powers. When Russia decided to withdraw the weapons, Maduro couldn't stop it. His sovereignty is limited. Opposition groups in Venezuela see opportunity. If Maduro can't even control his own military deployments, how can he govern? Protests increase. International pressure builds. By August, Maduro agrees to internationally supervised elections. He probably won't win. His support has collapsed. The economy is devastated. People are starving. The missile crisis was his last gambit. It failed. Now his regime is ending. The United States doesn't intervene directly. No invasion, no coup. Just economic pressure and diplomatic isolation. Eventually, Maduro falls. Democracy returns to Venezuela. That's the long-term victory, not just removing the missiles, but weakening the regime that hosted them. August 2025, the Russian perspective. Moscow analyzes the crisis differently. We demonstrated that Russia can project power into the Western Hemisphere. We forced the United States to negotiate. We prevented American missiles from reaching Ukraine. This is a strategic victory. That's spin, but it contains truth. Russia did demonstrate capability. They armed Venezuela with advanced weapons. They forced American response. They negotiated from position of strength. But they also learned that challenging the Monroe Doctrine has costs. The U.S. will respond militarily if necessary. The Caribbean isn't open for Russian military expansion. The lesson is clear. Next time Russia wants leverage, they'll look elsewhere. Maybe Africa, maybe Middle East, but probably not Latin America. The price is too high. September 2025, 6 months later. The Caribbean is quiet. USS George Washington has returned to Norfolk. Venezuelan missile sites are empty. Russian cargo flights have stopped. The crisis is over, but the implications continue. American military posture in the Caribbean is strengthened. More frequent patrols, more exercises with regional allies. The message: this is our hemisphere. Don't test us. Russia pivots to other regions. They increase presence in Africa, Middle East, Central Asia, places where American response is slower, where local partners are weaker. The great power competition continues, just in different places. Drop your prediction. Will Russia try this again in another country, or is the lesson learned? Navy Warfare wants your strategic forecast. October 2025, the technology race. American defense contractors accelerate counter-hypersonic research. The Glide Phase Interceptor program gets full funding. Development of directed energy weapons intensifies. Space-based sensors are upgraded. The goal: develop systems that can intercept Mach 9 missiles. It's technically challenging. may be impossible with current technology, but the alternative is vulnerability. Russia and China continue developing hypersonics. Faster, more maneuverable, harder to detect. The race has no finish line. Each side develops new capabilities. The other side develops counters. This is the 21st century arms race, not nuclear weapons, hypersonic missiles, cyber weapons, artificial intelligence. The domains change, but the competition remains. November 2025. Long-term implications. The April crisis established precedent. The United States will not tolerate hostile military systems in the Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine is enforced, with military power if necessary. That limits Russian and Chinese options. They can provide economic aid to Latin American countries. They can build diplomatic relationships. But they can't deploy weapon systems, not without American confrontation. That's a strategic advantage. The U.S. faces threats in Europe, in Asia, in Middle East, but not in the Western Hemisphere, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. These regions are secure. That allows the United States to focus military resources elsewhere, to deploy carriers to the Pacific, to support NATO in Europe, to maintain presence in Middle East. Without threats in the home hemisphere, American power projection is more effective globally. That's the real victory from the April crisis, not just removing the missiles, but ensuring they don't come back. December 2025, final assessment. The Venezuelan missile crisis was the closest the world came to war since Ukraine. For 72 hours, conflict was possible. American and Russian forces were ready to fight. But leaders chose negotiation over combat, diplomacy over destruction. Both sides got something. Both sides avoided something worse. That's successful crisis management, not perfect outcomes, but acceptable compromises that prevent catastrophe. Navy warfare will continue covering these operations, the deployments that prevent wars, the negotiations backed by military power, the crises resolved before they become conflicts. April 3rd to April 11th, 2025. 8 days. Russia deployed hypersonic missiles to Venezuela. The United States deployed a carrier strike group. Both sides prepared for war. Both sides chose peace. Real crisis, real military power, real diplomacy. This is what Navy warfare covers, because the most important operations are the ones that succeed without firing a shot. Subscribe to Navy Warfare, where we cover the crises you don't see, the deployments that prevent wars, the diplomacy backed by destroyers. The Venezuelan missile crisis is over. The Caribbean is secure. American resolve is proven. All because the Navy was ready, and leaders were willing to use it. That's deterrence. That's power. That's how you enforce the Monroe Doctrine in the 21st century. Real threats, real responses, real coverage. Navy warfare.